Hello, my name is Josh Griffin, and since October of 2021, I have been serving as the project lead for the Maumee Watershed Nutrient TMDL project. This is our last update detailing the development of the TMDL, but it does not mark the end of the project. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge all of the hard work from Ohio EPA's project team, especially Paul Gledhill, Ruth Breland, Emily Kyle Loudner, and Kate Hamilton, who were the core of the team developing the TMDL. Melinda Harris transitioned away from her role on the core TMDL team, but continued to provide quality advice and help when needed. Our permits program, especially Ashley Ward, Walter Aris, David Brumball, Ryan Gearhart, and Lynette Hablitzel, were engaged throughout the development of the TMDL to ensure we had a strong plan to implement the TMDL for sources permitted by Ohio EPA. I would also like to acknowledge the staff at the Ohio Department of Agriculture and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, especially Matt Lane, who has since moved to a new position at Ohio EPA, Peter McDonough, Terry Mesher, Sam Mullins, and Eric Sauce. Last but not least, Sandra Kosick-Sills from the Ohio Lake Erie Commission provided insightful reviews and ideas throughout development. The effort would not have been possible without strong support from our agency administrators who established an environment of collaboration among our agencies. For this update, first, we wanted to look back briefly on how we got here, then share some discussion about our efforts to improve the report following the closure of the comment period. Finally, we wanted to spend most of our time talking about what comes next. For those listening who are new to this process, Ohio EPA develops TMDLs, or total maximum daily loads, for surface waters that are not meeting our water quality goals. A TMDL determines the maximum amount of a pollutant that can be discharged to a water body and still allow it to meet its goals. Altogether, the TMDL is a plan that recommends implementation actions that are expected to meet reduction goals. Revisions to state law in 2017 created a new stakeholder involvement process for Ohio's TMDL projects. We now have 5 steps which interested parties can review and comment on documents prepared. We use the 5 dots shown in this graphic to indicate where we are in the process. As you can see from the graphic, we have completed all 5 steps in the process, and the final TMDL was submitted to US EPA for their review and approval on June 30th, 2023. Ohio EPA incorporated public outreach into TMDL development both through our 5-step TMDL process discussed on the previous slide and through additional outreach events. The additional outreach events consisted of 3 in-person events and 11 webinars. Most of these events were recorded, and the recordings are also posted on the project website, which is linked on the last slide of the presentation. The final TMDL report and responsiveness summary are now available on the project webpage, which again you can find at the link on the last slide. Ohio EPA reviewed and considered all comments and questions received during the public comment period. The responsiveness summary summarizes these comments along with our responses. We did receive comments that extend beyond the scope of existing agency authority and policies. By law, TMDLs do not affect policy or existing agency authorities. Ohio EPA acknowledges that water quality impairments and restoration efforts affect communities in different ways and appreciates the concerns shared by the commenters. However, responses were not included where the comments extended beyond the scope of TMDL development. To address comments, several report updates were made. We added details about CAFO permitting and oversight to the implementation plan and reasonable assurances. We made minor changes to the point source allocations. Details were added about the biennial progress reports, including a new appendix that outlines a strategy to collect available information about the many conservation programs active in the watershed. And as ODA move forward with their plans to continue H2 Ohio, they have articulated a goal to increase the footprint of H2 Ohio and similar federally funded programs to 50% of the acres in the Maumee watershed over the next biennium. This goal was added as a milestone for the 2026 Biennial Progress Report. While Ohio's role in developing the TMDL is coming to a close, it has one more step before it is final. That is review and approval by US EPA. The review may take up to 90 days, so we expect to hear the conclusion of US EPA's review and receive documentation of that decision by the end of September. From that point, we are looking forward to implementation. We have pinned our milestones to the biennial progress reports that can coincide with when we expect to have completed the actions. On the next several slides, I will share some details about what we expect in the coming years as we focus on implementation. Reducing phosphorus in the Maumee watershed is a common goal of the Domestic Action Plan, or DAP, and this TMDL. The DAP is developed by the Ohio Lake Erie Commission and brings together the activities of Ohio EPA, the Ohio Department of Agriculture, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and the Ohio Department of Health, with a focus on the common goal to reduce nutrients entering Lake Erie. Like the TMDL, the Domestic Action Plan is also a planning tool, and it will incorporate new information that was identified and developed in the TMDL. Updates to the Domestic Action Plan are already underway, and the Ohio Lake Erie Commission hosted a virtual workshop in April of this year, which is recorded and available on the Ohio Lake Erie Commission's DAP webpage. In addition to other updates, Ohio EPA will revise the far field loading targets that were included in the 2020 DAP so they are consistent with the TMDL and include new information about point source management in the Maumee watershed that is consistent with the TMDL's implementation strategy. There are opportunities for ongoing and ad hoc coordination, as well as a public meeting and webinar planned this fall. Many of the actions that will accomplish the milestones identified for the 2024 Biennial Progress Report are underway, and the first report will share progress made on these actions. It will be an ongoing effort to improve collaboration with federal agencies. This milestone serves as a way to highlight efforts like H2 Ohio's Water Quality Incentive Program, which increased incentives for high-priority wooded riparian buffers and wetlands established with federal funding. Ohio EPA is working with several partners to develop 9-element non-point source implementation strategies at the Huck 12 scale. We will provide an update on plans completed and new plans underway. As the 2022-2023 biennium comes to a close, we will look back on H2 Ohio and evaluate the overall progress made for BMP implementation through the program. Ohio EPA has already started outreach and development of a phosphorus general permit to implement the TMDL for Ohio's largest point sources. The goal is to finalize the permit in 2023, and the outcome of that effort will be evaluated. Finally, Ohio EPA and other state agencies continue to cooperate and find opportunities to further state priorities with GLRI funding. Any new projects identified and progress on existing projects will be discussed. Fewer specific milestones were identified for the 2026 Biennial Progress Report, and additional milestones for 2026 will be considered when the first report is developed. Several actions are expected to occur over the next 2 years, and specific milestones were identified based on those expected actions. Based on existing permitting cycles, the general permit that provides coverage for stormwater discharges from our municipal separate storm sewer systems, or MS4 communities, will be renewed in 2026. We will discuss the renewal of the permit and TMDL implementation through the permit in the 2026 report. Ohio's Nutrient Management Standard, often simply referred to as NRCS 590, was revised in late 2020. This update reflected changes to the Tri-State Fertility Guidelines and other changes like the removal of the P-index that guided phosphorus applications in high-risk environments. Ohio's rules for applying manure from calves and wastewater treatment biosolids include provisions based on the NRCS 590 standard. Ohio's state agencies are required to review administrative rules every 5 years, and both the CAF and biosolids rules will be revisited in the coming years based on that requirement. Among other updates, changes to the NRCS 590 standard will be considered during that review. Many conservations already interact with each other. For example, H2 Ohio has provided additional incentives for high priority practices discussed earlier, and GLRI has been used to increase funding delivered through the NRCS EQIP program. While the 2024 report will focus on the impact of individual conservation programs, the goal is to focus on the collective impact of conservation programs in the 2026 report. As mentioned earlier, the goal is to increase the collective footprint of these programs to 50% of the watershed acres over the next biennium. To wrap up today's update, I wanted to share some ongoing opportunities to engage in other planning efforts that set priorities for Lake Erie water quality and direct resources at the state and federal level. This slide provides several links that direct you to those planning efforts. First is a link to Ohio's Domestic Action Plan, which was discussed today. This plan is being updated this year. The second link directs you to Ohio EPA's Integrated Report. The Integrated Report is updated every 2 years and identifies Ohio's impaired waters as well as sets priorities for TMDL development. The second 2 links are federal efforts. GLRI Action Plan 4 is currently under development, and it sets priorities that direct how GLRI funds will be used within 5 focus areas. One of those focus areas includes non-point source nutrient management. Action Plan 4 will cover federal fiscal years 2025 through 2029. The last link is for the U.S. Domestic Action Plan. This plan is similar to Ohio's plan and will incorporate state and federal efforts directed at reducing nutrients in the Lake Erie watershed. This plan will also be updated this year. Again, all project documents and recordings of previous outreach events are posted on the project webpage linked here. Thank you to all of our stakeholders who assisted us in developing this Maumee Watershed Nutrient TMDL. We have valued your meaningful input and hope you will remain engaged as we now turn to focus 100% of our attention toward implementation of this plan.